What's up, people? Alright, so today I will be giving you guys a different style video. So today I will be answering all your beginner biker questions. Alright, so let's get right into the video. The questions will be taken from 3 different sources, so Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. So let's get it started. Alright, so the first question comes from King_PJ, and he asks, is it a good idea to start with a 600? No. Short answer, no. Explanation: 600s are quite powerful bikes. They are also quite docile, and when I say docile, I mean that the power doesn't kick in when you're at a certain RPM or you're at a certain rev. So while they are kind of manageable under a certain amount of rev, I would not recommend a 600 for a beginner. I would recommend anything under a 600 for a beginner. So a 300, a 250, a 150, a 650 for a beginner. Now, if you're the type of person who has a lot of self-control, then fine, you can go ahead with a 600, because I know persons who started on 600s and they are quite fine right now. But you have to have a lot of self-control. If you don't have self-control, start on something smaller and build your way up. And a matter of fact, starting on a smaller CC bike will grant you a little bit more skill, because smaller bikes, we tend to push them to their limit, and in that way we tend to learn a lot more. With 600, we might not be able to push it to the limit at the time, and thus some of us, we may learn a little bit slower on the 600. One more point: 600 these days are being made with modes, so it makes it a lot more controllable. Now, even though they are being made with mode, I still don't recommend for a beginner, right? So a lot of 600 are being made with 3 modes. So you have like a rain mode, a normal mode, and then you have like a sport mode or race mode. So while a beginner can start on a 600 and even start it and even ride it in rain mode and be alright, for the vast majority I would say no. Moving on to the next question. Kelly Joker 8 says that I want to buy a second-hand bike. What are the steps? Alright, so you're buying a second-hand bike. First and foremost, you must know what second-hand bike you want. Well, a lot of persons don't know. Well, in Jamaica, the vast majority of bikes that are on the road are yeng bikes. So if you're buying a second-hand bike or you're buying a yeng bike, you can yeng bikes come in sizes of between 150cc all the way up to 250cc's. Now, you have to know your price point, how much money you're willing to spend. If you don't know how much money you're willing to spend, go on Facebook. I recommend Facebook to everybody, because there are lots of groups on Facebook that sell bikes and other bike parts and stuff and cars and stuff. So go on Facebook, or even go on Google and search bikes for sale in Jamaica. It will bring up Facebook pages, so you can start there and you can go through the pages and explore and see what are the options, right? And then you can see what price points there are for the year bike, the type of bike, and all of those stuff. So the first thing that I would recommend, go on Google, go on Facebook and search bike for sale, scroll through the groups, figure out what price point the bikes are, and then you can budget or work out your money based on the prices that you're seeing there. Now after that, then you want to check out the bikes, right? And I will have to reserve this for a different video, but that's the number 1 starting step. Alright, we got a question here from KAOSK Cruise Gears, whatever the name is. Sorry if I mispronounce it. The question says, I want to start my bike business. What item you think I should get? Now, in terms of bike business, are you thinking about selling bikes, or are you thinking about starting with bike parts? You have to know exactly what you want to do. Now, if you're thinking about selling bike parts, then the first thing that you need to do is to figure out what bike parts are more in demand, because how business works is supply and demand. So whatever things are in demand, get it, purchase a few of them, sell them, and then see how those things sells. You can visit other bike shops and figure out like the prices. If you don't know the prices, visit other bike shops, figure out prices, and figure out what's being sold, you know, more frequently, and all of them stuff there. Same with accessories. You may know that you may see a biker sport like a handle, or you may see the same handle on many different bikes. Go ahead, purchase a few of the handles, put them up for sale, and then just see how the turnaround is. So the first step is you have to experiment. You have to buy a couple things, but first you're not buying something that nobody wants. Start with something that everybody may want, or start with something that nobody has, but you see it as something that, you know, people may want in the future. So that's a good start. All right, we got a question from powerful number 1, and the question reads, how can I insure a new bike with a learner's license? Now, in this day and age, this video is being recorded in 2024. The new laws, new Road Traffic Act, new everything states that a vehicle cannot be licensed with a learner's permit. You must have either a driver's license or a rider's license in order to license your vehicle. So what that means is, if you have a learner's and you have a bike and you want to license it, you won't be able to do so, right? If you have a family member or a friend or somebody who has their license, you can go ahead and ask them to assist you with licensing the vehicle. I do have videos on the channel that shows you that show you what to do in order to go about getting your learners and all of those stuff. I will put the links in the description, so whenever you finish done watching this video, you can go in the description and you'll see it. Oh, and I might have sidetracked a little. The question asks, how can I insure? Let me just make sure I answer that specifically. You cannot insure a bike with a learner's anymore. Before, it was quite fine, you could have done it, but these days insurance companies are not accepting learner's license while insuring a vehicle anymore. Next question comes from Camo Sparta, or Camu, or whatever the name pronounced. So the question reads, give me a rough estimate of the cost to fully straighten or legalize a bike. Very good question. So I am going from the top of my dome, and as I mentioned earlier, this video has been recorded in 2024. Maybe next year the prices may change, but I don't have any control over that. All right, and the cost of straightening a bike, it kind of depends whether it's a brand new bike or if it's a used bike. Once again, I have videos on licensing, how much it costs to license a brand new bike and a used bike. But generally, from the top of my dome, when you're licensing a new bike, you have to think about insurance. The cheapest insurance that I know right now is $17,250. It may be less. First of all, you have to insure the bike, right? When you buy a brand new bike, you get that bike with fitness, right? The bike comes already with fitness, so you don't have to sort out any sort of fitness. So first thing you do, insure the bike. As I said, $17,250, maybe less for insurance. After you finish insuring the bike, then you go to the tax office and you register the motorcycle. Now, since you're registering a new motorcycle, they will charge you for the preparation of the title, which from the top of my dome, I think it's around $1,500, 2,000 Jamaican dollars if I'm not mistaken. And also, if you're more than likely you'll be getting new license plate, the cost for that is, if you're going to register the bike for 6 months, which is half a year, the cost is $2,700 and I think $750 if I'm not mistaken. If you're going to license the bike for 1 full year, the cost will be $5,000 5,000 odd. I will put all that in on the screen. Now it varies. If you have a bigger bike, which is a 600, it will be more, approximately 8,000 odd for a 600, if I'm not mistaken, to be licensed for a year. Now if you're licensing a used bike, right, if the bike does not have fitness on it, then you need to go ahead and get the bike fit. Now there are a number of ways you can go ahead and get the bike fit. Find whichever one that suits you and go ahead and deal with it. But first you have to pay for the fitness fee. Fitness fee right now is 4,500, right? And then everything else that you want to do after that, then you sort that out. If you're purchasing new plates, then it would be the same cost as I mentioned. If you have your own plate and you're just transferring them, they'll just charge you, I think it's a mere $1,500 or something like that to transfer the plates. Next question is from Lamar Jackson 121, and it says, what bike can I buy as first, although I've been riding a good while? So basically he's asking what bike can he buy as his first bike. Now there are numerous bike options available, but it all boils down to what you like the most and what your pocket can handle. Now, predominantly in Jamaica, we have the Yeng Yeng bikes. Yeng Yeng bikes come in various CCs, as I mentioned before, 150, 200cc, and 250. And the prices do vary with each CC. I can't give you any prices right now. If you want prices, it's best to visit each dealership, give them a call or so, and ask them, because their prices do change from time to time. What I would recommend, if you have access, if you have the money and you can purchase anything besides a Yeng Yeng bike, go ahead. I would only recommend a 300cc, right, a 400cc, a 500, a 650, anything like that. You have Hondas, Suzukis, well, not really Suzuki, but you have Hondas, Kawasaki, Yamahas, KTM. You have various bike brands that do sell smaller CC bikes, right? And these bikes, you're looking at cost averaging from 300,000 all the way up to almost maybe $1 million. Alright, Yeng Yeng bikes are much cheaper nowadays. Yeng Yeng bikes are averaging between 100 and brand new, that is 170, 180,000 all the way up to 250,000. It depends, as I mentioned, it depends on your pocket. If you don't have a 300cc money, then by all means go ahead and buy a Yeng Yeng, right? And you can upgrade from that, right? You have Hondas that are here, they are quite expensive. You know, the Honda 160, the Honda Hornet, Honda Twister, they're quite expensive. You're looking at costs averaging from 500,000 up, right? You have Yamahas as well, the Yamaha 250s and so on, and those are averaging from 500 up as well. It's best to make your decision based on your pocket, right, first, and then what you like next, right? I only would recommend a 150cc for somebody who rides around in the city a lot. But if you're going anywhere outside of the city, like you take on a little highway, then the 150cc would not be the best option. I would recommend at least a 250. Alright, next question is from Wolf of Odin number 1. What is the best way to break in a new bike? This is a very good question. In Jamaica, I realize a lot of bikers, they don't really care about breaking in a bike. But listen up, guys. Whenever you buy a new bike, it's good to pay attention to the break-in period, right? What is the break-in period? The break-in period is basically when the engine components, they get to properly seat together and properly mesh together. Because a brand new bike, everything is not going to mesh properly right away. So after a while, once you ride the bike, everything starts working. You always hear some people referring to the engine not working yet. So that means same thing. It means that the engine components are not yet meshing properly together, right? For one, you have the cylinder. So the cylinder is like a little cone. Not cone, it's like a little cylinder. Hence the name cylinder. So it's like a little cup then, and then you have the piston inside the cylinder. So the piston goes up and down inside the cylinder. So whenever you buy a new bike, the piston and rings, they travel within the cylinder, and they tend to rub the cylinder walls a little bit, and then that involves part of the braking process. So whenever you're braking in a bike, you have two different ways of braking in a bike, right? The manual or the book will tell you to go slow, right? They will tell you not to pass a certain RPM or a certain rev for a period of time or for a period of mileage. Now in Jamaica, how we brake in bikes, we just basically go up on bike and ride them, right? What I recommend, the proper way to brake in a bike, go through all of the gears. So when you're riding the bike, ride it through first gear. Do not limit any of the gears. I would not recommend limiting any of your gears until the bike reaches maybe, let's say, a 2-month period, right, of regular riding, or at least a month of regular riding. Go through the gears, don't shift. So you're building up the compression, you're making sure all of the components seat together, you're going through the gears, making sure all of the gear teeth, everything seat together. So as I mentioned, I don't recommend limiting your brand new bike, right? That can cause a lot of damage pretty early. So once again, best way to brake in a bike, in my recommendation, don't ride it too fast and don't ride it too slow as well. And whenever you're riding slow, let's say, do not be in a high gear, keep it in a moderate gear. So if you're riding with traffic, let's say traffic is normally 50 kilometers per hour, normally you would want to keep the bike in around third or second gear. Don't be in 6th gear and you're moving 50 miles per hour. What that does is it bogs down the engine, and it made the engine have to work harder to not die, basically. So go through your gears. Don't ride in high gear at low speed, right? And don't ride in low gear at high speed. All right, so just go through your gears, run through your gears, and make sure that everything seats nicely. All right, another question. Well, there are a couple questions from the same person. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. If not, then just let me know. The next question that this person asks is how to not overrev when changing gears. All right, so you have to listen to the motorcycle, right? So whenever you hear the motorcycle reach at a high pitch, then you know that it's time to change gears. Over revving basically is when the bike reaches its exact limit and you have it there for a while and then you change gear. All right, so basically just listen to the bike. Don't change the gear whenever the bike is limiting. Change the gear just before the bike limits. That gives you the most performance out of the engine. As did you know that once the motorcycle limits, it starts cutting power? Limiting doesn't give you any power. Once you're in a race setting, if you listen to the racers, they don't limit their bikes. They carry it all the way up to near to the limit and then they change, because that's when the peak performance is. Once it starts to limit, then there's no power starts cutting.